You've sold your birthright for a mess of porridge. What have you gotten? You've gotten nothing.
For the West, and especially for America, everything that made them who they are is denied. Therefore, also who they are, they deny. And one of the major factors of all of this, of course, is race. Specifically, well, not even race, but racism, white supremacy, and the dehumanization of so-called black people, the dehumanization of Africans, and their treatment of them.
What kind of parent are you? Cowering down and cowering before the enemy while your children are standing there. They will take their lead from you.
Hello brothers and sisters, I really hope you're all doing fine from wherever you're watching me from now. This is the time the black continent should unite, and this is the time we should bring all black folks together and make sure that we talk in one voice. Now, this is a video that has been done to make sure that Africa unites and Africa comes back together. The diaspora unites with Africa, and we make sure that Africa and the diaspora, the Caribbean, are prosperous in whatever they do. So let's watch this video and have a really quick discussion at the end of it.
This is all denied. And the worst thing you can do, if you're talking about it as on an individual level, if you anthropomorphize the nation, as I'm doing, the worst thing you can do to someone who has a split personality is to confront them about their condition, because they've built their whole way of coping in the world, their whole way of functioning in the world is based on these two elements of their identity never meeting, never being reconciled, always being compartmentalized, what needs to happen is for it to be confronted. It needs to be reconciled. It needs to be dealt with. They're never willing to do that. So you look at this reality of who they are, what they've done, and how they have built their the psyche that they have, and then the ethos that they desperately need to maintain. Put all of that as the context for Black History Month. Which is your obligation in Black History Month, because this is an obligation that is being put on black people in America. This isn't an opportunity, this isn't a celebration, this is an obligation being put on black people, that you will agree to contain the totality of your history in 28 days in February, and what you will talk about during those 28 days in February is not going to make us too uncomfortable. Your obligation is that you will go along with the maintenance of our fake ethos, which requires you to be very, very careful about what you say about our deeds and our actions and what actually our psyche is. And this is a manifestation of that psyche, of that dominating psyche, of that oppressive psyche that has built the whole this dominating and oppressive psyche that the ethos that they built is designed to deny and to pretend is not the case. The ethos that they built, of course, is not as oppressors but as liberators, not as enslavers but as saviors, as redeemers, not as punishers. The ethos that they built is the complete opposite of what their history shows they are and what they've been. And obviously you can never change, you can never become even the aspirational ethos, because that's all you can call it. The American ethos is an aspirational ethos at best. That's giving them benefit of the doubt that they aspire to be liberators, they aspire to be redeemers, they aspire to be saviors. They aspire to be good and righteous and freedom-loving and fighters for justice and so forth, defenders of rights and all of that. We can, benefit of the doubt, say that they aspire to be that. But when you are applying it to yourself as if you are that, and as if there's any evidence whatsoever that you are that, then you'll never be it. So even if it is an aspiration, if you're claiming that you have already achieved it, well, then you never will achieve it. But they put Black History Month, a parentheses in the year when the totality of the African American experience has to be contained within this 28 days, and it has to be palatable. And the whole purpose of it is actually to celebrate us for giving you Black History Month. You know, and the same goes for all of these, in my opinion anyway, my unqualified opinion, the federal holidays, like they just gave it to Juneteenth, I think last year or the year before.
Within the past 2 years, it's become a
federal holiday, right? MLK Day, Martin Luther King Day, and so on. To me, this is absolutely, from again, my opinion, this is absolutely grotesque. The federal government granting these holidays or establishing these holidays, to me, is like the killer coming to the funeral of the one whom he killed and giving flowers to the widow. That's what these holidays represent to me, in my opinion. And I'm always reminded when Black History Month comes along, or when there's Juneteenth, or when it's Martin Luther King Day, or what have you. Well, I think that the useful thing about Trump is that he can package the dismantling of American empire as the building of American empire. That's what he's doing. Because you have to sell to your demographic. And Americans are not the most mature, the most realistic, the most responsible people in the world, the most well acquainted with history and so forth. So you cannot possibly sell America's necessary downsizing and the managed erosion of America and the hollowing out of America as, you know, we've made a lot of bad choices for a very long time. And we've only ever really made short-term plans for the future. So it turns out that there's a lot of unavoidable, necessary changes that have to be made at your expense. You can't really sell that to the American public. You can't tell the American public that consequences are a thing. That demographic of political consumers simply cannot compute a message like that. Because look, what Trump is going to do, what he is doing, and what he will do, these are all things that were going to happen anyway, with or without him. He's just the one who's selling it to you as a good thing. That's his job. You know, he's like the guy at a company who's designated as the one to deliver the bad news to you that you're going to be let go. And you designate him for that job because he has a way of presenting it to you. He has a way of presenting to you, you being fired as the greatest opportunity of your life, you know? All the new horizons that you're going to be able to pursue and so on. That's Trump. That's Trump's job. You know, America has been stuffing balloons up their sleeves for a very long time and telling everyone that they're muscles. But now even the balloons are deflating. The great American hoax is over. And Trump is there to oversee the dismembering of American empire. The US is going to be isolated, it's going to withdraw, and it's going to be non-competitive globally. And like I said, this is all unavoidable. This would have happened with or without Trump. You've simply come to the end of your life cycle as a hegemonic superpower. And the decay and the decomposition that will follow is just part of the natural process. Trump can't be blamed for that, and he can't be given credit for any of this. But his job is to make you think that none of it's happening, even while it's happening right in front of your face. This is what Trump's main job is. Because look, for example, drill, baby, drill, right? Make America energy self-sufficient, et cetera, et cetera. Fire up all of the dormant oil wells and so forth in West Texas and so on. While simultaneously asking OPEC to lower oil prices, which of course means asking OPEC to increase production. Okay. The way that goes is increase production by OPEC, and if they do it, by the US as well, okay, then the oil price drops, and cheap oil floods the market, out of sync with demand, driving the price down even further. Now the price is too low for it to even be profitable for American producers to drill, to refine, or to extract. You understand? American oil producers need for oil to be at a minimum of $40 per barrel for it to even be worth it. For it to even be worth it to drill and extract and refine and so forth. Meanwhile, OPEC can still make a profit at just $10 a barrel. So you understand, America cannot play the oil game with OPEC. OPEC has the capacity to ramp up oil production if they want to, anytime they want to. They can ramp up oil production. They can increase production to a level within just 90 days that America couldn't reach even in 5 years. In other words, OPEC can decimate the American oil and gas sector anytime they want. The only reason they don't do that is because they want to maintain price stability for their own benefit, for their own reasons. They would rather have oil at $70 a barrel or $100 a barrel rather than $10 a barrel. So they choose to allow America to stay in the game. And that's the only reason. But if you're going to ramp up oil production on your end, well, then you better hope that OPEC responds by cutting production on their end just to stabilize the price. Because if they don't, if they respond in kind and they do what you do, and they also ramp up oil production, and then they drive the price of oil down to their minimum profit level, well, that will nuke America's whole oil industry. Plants, drilling sites, refineries, all of that's going to shut down. Tens of thousands of jobs will just disappear overnight. And for every one job in the oil and gas sector, there's at least 2 or 3 jobs that are indirectly related to that. So you were looking at potentially hundreds of thousands of jobs lost by drill, baby, drill. Not to mention, when that happens, no one in the private sector is going to invest in the oil sector anymore. So you see, no more exports to Europe, no more exports anywhere, no more oil exports, energy exports. Meanwhile, you're going to abandon renewable energy, clean energy, and so on. The Green New Scam, as Trump says, he's very much against that. And at the same time, you have the UAE and you have Saudi Arabia investing hundreds of billions of dollars in the U.S. In energy-intensive businesses in the United States. I mean, Trump said it himself. If oil companies drill themselves out of business, I don't give a damn. That's what he said. So you see how the rhetoric, how the marketing actually sells the opposite of what the policy outcome is actually going to be. I don't think for a second that Trump doesn't know that. I think he knows that. No one who's putting these policies in place doesn't know what the outcomes will be. And that's why the policies are being pursued, because they want to achieve those outcomes, those very outcomes. But you can't sell that to the electorate. You can't tell the American people, we, your private sector overlords, are no longer tied to the success or the prosperity or the stability of the American economy. We have global interests, not national interests. And so we've decided to drive the U.S. into energy bankruptcy as quickly as possible. And maybe then we can sell all of America's oil and gas assets to Saudi Arabia or to China or what have you for pennies. You can't tell the American people that. So instead, you say, Trump says, we're going to drill, baby, drill. We're going to drill, better, stronger, faster than anyone. We're going to produce more oil than anyone else in the world, and so on and so on and so on. We're number one, and everyone cheers. Everyone applauds while the oxygen is being drained from the room. And let me tell you, that's exactly what's going on. The last time Trump was in office, Saudi Arabia and Russia collaborated to flood the global oil market during COVID-19, no less. And the U.S., under Trump, the U.S., the media, portrayed this as a price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia. But it was transparently done. It was transparently undertaken by Russia and Saudi Arabia, specifically to undermine the American oil sector, the American oil industry. It completely crashed the oil price, making oil production completely unviable for the U.S., for U.S. producers, okay? Trump had good relations with Russia. He had good relations with Saudi Arabia, still does. And I think it's fair to say that this was a 3-way collaboration, not just between Russia and Saudi Arabia. Trump was involved. And now Trump already wants to do it again within his first week in office. I don't think OPEC is going to go along with it, to be honest. Not right now. Why should they? You said drill, baby, drill, so you go ahead and do that. You go ahead. You drill. But we are not going to initiate a crash in the oil price. We need the money right now. We have projects. See, you have to take Trump seriously, but never at his word. Never take him literally. But do take him seriously, because he's a mascot for a faction of power that needs to be taken very seriously. The A-National OCGFC, owners and controllers of global financialized capital. They're essentially the real unipolar superpower of the world. And Trump is their hatchet man in America. Now, generally speaking, this is going to be very good for the Muslim world. Generally speaking, it's going to be good for the Muslim world and the global South more broadly. Yes, it is. But I know that things are going to get very hard for you in the US. Things are going to get very hard for you in the West overall. Now, most people around the world in the global South, they'll react to that news the same way that someone would react to hearing about a serial killer getting shanked in prison. You know, he had it coming. That's how most people feel, to be honest. But I know that most people in the West already have it hard. I know that most people in the West are actually already suffering. And I know what it's like to live in America. It's not easy. And I know that just because the consequences that you may suffer may be the result of your own actions, that doesn't make the consequences any easier to endure. I know it's going to be hard, especially when you're suffering the consequences of actions that were taken by your elites, not necessarily the actions of the common people. So I know this is hard to take, and it's going to be hard to take. Now, again, let me reiterate, this is not about Trump. It's not about Trump. The isolation, the degradation of America was going to happen anyway. It had to happen. This is just the necessary course of the logic of Western predatory capitalism. Just like Gorbachev wasn't really the one who destroyed the Soviet Union, he just oversaw the inevitable destruction, self-destruction of the Soviet Union because it had run its course. America has run its course. And when I say Western predatory capitalism, those adjectives are important because it's not even really about capitalism in and of itself. It really mostly has to do with the culture and the civilizational peculiarities of the West. They don't act like that because of capitalism. Their capitalism acts like this because of the way they are. You understand? And in fact, it's because of the way they are, that they even approach capitalism, trade, and so forth, and business the way they do. Their particular version of capitalism. And it's because of them, and because of the way they are, and because of their approach to capitalism, that the A-National OCGFC even are a thing. And it's also because of this that their own societies are now on the chopping block. It's because of the way they are. But that's a topic for another day. The point is, this is something that has to happen. It's something that has to happen. It's something that had to happen. It's something that will happen. And it's going to happen, no matter what. No matter whether it's Trump or anyone else. Anyone who says, for example, well, that's what you get for voting for Trump, you know, or you should have voted for Harris. Well, I mean, you're so thoroughly indoctrinated and participating in the deception and the deflection of that system that you yourself are just as much a cause for the collapse of the United States as anyone else that you blame for it. You know, you created a class of A-national elites, oligarchical elites, whose private profit interests are no longer connected to your own economy. You did that. They're not connected to any productive activity. They're not connected to any nationality. They're not connected to your standard of living, not to your stability, not to your safety, your prosperity, your success as a nation, or anything. And that class of private sector powers became essentially a nation unto themselves, like I've said many times. A nation that transcends borders. It transcends national interests. They don't have any interests except their own interests. You created that, and you celebrated that, in fact. You still celebrate it, never realizing that they would inevitably sacrifice you for their own profit interests, the same way that they've sacrificed millions of people outside your country. You know, you created this psychopathic class of predators. And you expected them to never bite the hand that feeds them, even though the hand that feeds them has always been feeding them hands, you know? Now they can't tell the difference between the food and the feeder anymore. It's all just flesh to them. You can't raise a wolf on human flesh and expect him to distinguish between the human you are feeding him from the human who is feeding him. Eventually, he doesn't see you as his master or his owner anymore. He only sees you as food. Well, you raised a wolf on the flesh of the global South, and it turns out you taste just the same. Yes, wolves don't care if it's dark meat or light meat. They'll chew you up either way. Look, for decades, the military-industrial complex, the MIC, in America, it was a towering giant in America, in the U.S. It was the driver of the economy. They shaped policies at home and abroad. But today, there's a decline in its dominance, and that's been coming for a while. It's no longer the sole engine of the American economy. It's no longer the most important engine of the economy or the global economy. Now, this change wasn't due to any great moral awakening or some newfound sense of conscience. No, it's the result of systemic shifts within the American economy, popular fatigue over endless wars, corruption and fraud within the military-industrial complex, and of course the rise of the A-National OCGFC. The U.S. economy has diversified. I mean, decades ago, in the 50s, say, weapons and military technology was central for America's economic growth. But today, other industries, technology, finance, obviously healthcare, and so on, it surpasses that. And of course, globalization shifted the focus from building tanks and jets to dominating digital platforms, international markets, and so on. Then came the end of the Cold War. The end of the Cold War was the big shift when the Soviet Union collapsed. You know, then the supposed existential threat that justified the immense military budgets and spending and so on, that disappeared. That threat disappeared. I mean, you tried to come up with new threats, terrorism, war on drugs, what have you, but none of these threats really could justify the scale of investment that was needed to keep the military-industrial complex, influential. And like I said, the public became tired of wars in the 2000s. Iraq, Afghanistan, it drained the American public, emotionally, financially, politically, and people began to question the wisdom of pouring trillions and trillions of dollars into conflicts that only ever resulted in spreading chaos and destruction. Not to mention, you have rampant fraud and corruption in the military-industrial complex. You have overcharging, you have magically disappearing funds, that were handed over to defense contractors. They've misplaced enough money. The military-industrial complex, defense contractors, have misplaced enough money to house every homeless person in America and educate every child. They charge so much for one weapon that China could probably build a dozen. Hated them for it. We salute them. Even those with no faith, who genuinely struggle for the rights of their people. We salute them. It's a part of our faith. It's a part of our religion to appreciate those who genuinely stand for justice, even if we know that their vision is never going to be complete without Islam. So if you want to be proud of Ibrahim Traore because of just his skin color, go ahead. If you want to be proud of him because of his country or his continent of origin, go ahead. But we're proud of him because of his belief. He's our brother in belief. We're proud of him because of his faith. And anyone who wants to deny that or deny us that, well, you're just petty and foolish and ideologically shackled. Ibrahim Traore led a coup against a government that was subservient to its foreign masters. There's been many, many coups across the continent, but usually those just replaced one neo-colonial agent with another, usually. But Ibrahim Traore is different. He's not just changing the government. He is uprooting the whole system of neo-colonial domination, and he's succeeding. He's understood what many people have failed to grasp, which is that independence is meaningless if you don't sever the control of the owners and controllers of global financialized capital. He's understood that security is a myth as long as it depends on the military patronage of your former colonizers. And he's understood that sovereignty is impossible under the shadow of Western tutelage. He's not merely a head of state. Ibrahim Traore is the revolutionary archetype of the 21st century. He was forged in the reality of Western-backed insurgency and Western economic warfare and propaganda. Because, today the fight for freedom is not just waged by armies anymore, but by narratives and by resource policies and by alliances and by collective sovereignty. Traore has made the choice to look towards Russia and Turkey and towards other new centers of power in the multipolar world. That's strategic, not because they're perfect allies, but because he recognizes the necessity of breaking the Western stranglehold on Burkina Faso. This is pragmatism in service to principle. This again is the methodology of Middle Nation. It's engagement without submission, cooperation without subjugation. It's trade-offs without selling out. He also understands, crucially, that Africa's liberation cannot be rented from outside. It has to be rooted in the reclamation of Africa's own wealth. His moves to exert control over Burkina Faso's gold, building indigenous defense capacity and food sovereignty, these aren't just political decisions. These are acts of civilizational self-respect. It's a declaration that Africa's children will no longer be bled dry for the enrichment of Western imperial capital. We see Ibrahim Traore as a brother, not simply because of his faith, but also because of his fight, because he embodies the spirit of the Quranic guidance to stand firmly for justice, even if it is against your own selves, even if it is against those who are in power, and even if it is against the odds. Burkina Faso isn't just a battleground today for the Burkinabe people. It's the front line in a global struggle for liberation. What Ibrahim Traore is doing is echoing in the Sahel, in Niger, in Mali, across Africa, across the Ummah, across the global south, and across the world. Every oppressed people around the world can now look to Burkina Faso and to Ibrahim Traore and say liberation looks like it's actually possible. But obviously, the global order trembles at the prospect that anyone is going to follow his example. They're afraid of his courage and his clarity and his defiance in the face of Western power and Western threats. And they should be afraid of that. They should tremble because they know the jig is up. But we know that when they get scared, they get dangerous. And Ibrahim Traore is under severe threat. There's already been something like 20 attempts on his life since coming to power. They just stopped a coup from happening last week, organized by the Americans and by the French, right there in the French embassy. Because a free Africa is just something that that old wolf can't take. You know, they've been keeping Africa in the past for so long that they know that if they let Africa get away from them, then they're going to be the ones who are consigned to history. The chains that have been holding Africa down all this time are also the only things holding the West up. So now America has said that they want to arrest him. You know, they've already tried to take him out more than once, like I said. Now they're trying to smear him. They're trying to attack him. They sent the...
Hello, brothers and sisters. I hope you're all doing fine from wherever you are watching me from now. We've been having issues as the black community, and I think it is time we should come out and address these things that we've been facing years after years. Now, when we talk about bringing the children of Africa and bringing the diaspora back and maybe uniting them to be one pact, now we are not talking a strange story that no one has talked about it. So many people tried talking about the same thing. We've had great leaders who talked about this, but they are no more. We've had people and we've had organizations, we've had Pan-Africanists in one corner of the world talking about the same thing. But things have not yet changed since then. Then we must go back and research things how they have been done previously, because you cannot do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. Sometimes you have to change the techniques that are being used maybe to achieve some goals and maybe and get to some places, you know. I've seen a lot of us talking about how we should unite ourselves and how we should do things in a different way. But I do not know if we actually have the guts, if we actually have the capability of doing it. Sometimes we can say we have the capability, but are we ready to do it? You know, the readiness in us is still wanting. And I feel like we should sometimes confront the truth the way it is. We have been an enemy to ourselves, that we've let great leaders to be taken away from us. We have let our own leaders down. Now, what do we want to achieve if at all the things that really matters to us are no longer priorities? Now, if we talk about the unity of black folks around the world, but we are not prioritizing the same, then where are we heading to? Now, we need actions. Actions really speaks louder than anything else, you know. And if at all we need actions. Now, I'm here to understand why someone like Tim Wise can talk on our behalf and we ourselves cannot even do that, you know. Why can't we let ourselves to be the frontliners of our own issues? If we are to unite and if we are to do things in a very unique way, then what way are we going to do them? Now, a story is being told how Africa was one. A story is being told how the continental drift began from Africa. But her story has never been told where we got ourselves into this mess and how we've managed to actually let ourselves still suffer the same problems. Who is going to change the narrative if we are not willing to do that? Now, I've been a good fan and I've been listening to some videos by some good interviews from one Malcolm X, and he used to say that we are the enemies of ourselves because we are the only people who cannot allow ourselves to unite, that we've allowed ourselves to be brainwashed. And when we say brainwashed, is carrying the Western mentality with you whenever you go. Now, I'm not saying that this should be a disclaimer, by the way. I'm not saying that everything Western is bad, but some things in the Western world have been used maybe in a way or the other to maybe continue with the division we have in Africa and the division we have amongst ourselves. Now, tell me why someone might not, someone who comes from Africa, and they first do not recognize this continent as long as they are out of this continent. Now, they say the continent is rotten with corruption and so many other things, but are we willing to come back and change whatever it is? For how long are we going to sit there and complain about the same issues that we've had since we were children? Now, if at all we want to change everything, then are we actually having the powers to do that? Now, one and only Louis Farrakhan, in one of his viral lectures, did say that we have black leaders in power in Africa, but they have not that power. We have black leaders in power in the US, but they do not have the same power. Then, if that's the case, what are we going to do? How are we going to get the power back? Now, we are only going to get the power back by the unity that we are going to have. We've tried so many things among ourselves. We've tried so many things in Africa, in the diaspora, but we've never tried coming together. Now, black history should actually be taught each and every other institution in Africa. Actually, it should be an entry to everywhere you go to, you know, and it should be put everywhere, and every other African should know where this continent came from, where the black folks came from, and all where we are heading to. If that is going to be the case, then we are going really to be a good continent. Now, the continent of Africa is very rich, and the black community has a lot of brains, but are we using the same brains to make sure that we are independent? Are we using the same brains to make sure that we are not depending on someone else? Tell me how countries like a country like the Central Republic of Africa and Ghana are still in debt while they have mineral resources. Tell me why DRC Congo people are suffering, but we have mineral resources. Tell me why we must not unite as Africa and have a one currency. What's the problem with having that? Now, you all know where the problem is, and you know who fear having the problem. Now, if the problem actually is us uniting, then we must face the problem itself, you know, because sometimes there is no success without stumbles, and I think it is high time Africa we take the risk of having so many stumbles to this success and to this unity. You know, when Muammar Gaddafi talked about the same unity, we did not support him, you know. Some of us were children, but those leaders who were there never supported him. Now, when great other leaders are awakening the whole continent, we are not talking. We are waiting them to be eliminated so that we can come back and start ranting on our own social media. For how long are we going to live this life? This life that we are making ourselves like it is so difficult on ourselves than it is difficult on them who are exploiting us, you know. Now, if we allow ourselves to be exploited today, tomorrow, and the other days coming, what is the generation that is going to come going to inherit? What is the Gen Beta, Gen Alpha going to inherit? Now, we are going to leave a country out of shutters, you know. We are going to leave this we are going to leave Africa in great shambles, you know, and no one really wants to inherit a bad country. No one really wants to inherit a country where there is no stability, a country where mineral resources have been exploited, you know, a country where mineral resources have been extorted, and those in leaders who are watching whatever was happening. Now, it is not about you and me alone. It is about our motherland. It is about the climate. It's about everything. Tell me if you are going to see an African continent or the black people distincting themselves from whatever is happening. You know, something very crazy right now is that we are not seeing Africa in the next 50 years or 100 years. And we are not seeing ourselves, the generations that are going to come? What are they going to inherit? Now, the climate in Africa is getting worse day by day, and it is getting hotter and hotter. The global warming effect is real in Africa, and if we are not going to be careful, we are going to end up having miseries. If we say we are the chosen generation and we say that we are the chosen people now, and some of us believe that they are the chosen Jews or something, not the real Jews, I mean. And how are we going to stand by that? And how are we going to make sure that if actually we are the chosen one, how are we going to make our continent to be the chosen continent? Sometimes we might be talking about the unity, but some people might not take it serious. Time will tell, and that's whatever. I am a believer of time will tell that you just have to watch the errors you make today and the long effects that they are going to play along in the coming years. Africa, the Black and the Caribbean, now the Latin America that like Brazil, all these countries must watch out, and if you are not going to play along with the game, then we are going to lose it. Sometimes you must go along and sometimes you must oppose. Now, it doesn't really mean that if you are being exploited, you should actually accept the exploitation. Sometimes you have to say no to exploitation, and sometimes you must rise beyond the levels of the same exploitation. We must unite, and the only way to unite is making sure that we do in whatever we believe in, not that which someone believes in. Now, they believe that maybe this continent cannot be great, but you and me know that this continent will be great. You and me know that if actually we work our way out, everything is going to be great. So it is a matter of who believes in what and what is going to happen if we do not do whatever we believe in. Now, Black folks, this is just a wake-up call for all of us and those people who believe this is not a racial war, that we are trying to play black-white games. This should actually be another disclaimer that we are trying to unite the people who have been oppressed, And when I say oppressed, some people have had the privileges, and you all understand the white privileges that some people had, not all, but some of them that were maybe fixed in the system. And the systems have been so wrong, and the systems have not been accepting whatever Africa does and whatever is good for this continent. So we all have a role to play in this, and we all need to unite, and we all need to say whatever matters a lot to ourselves, Say it out, and say it with a very broad smile that we are not going to accept this, that we are not going to do this, that we are here not to play along with the music sometimes, but we are here to actually listen to the same music being played to us and listen to the lyrics of the music. This is a metaphor, and I'm not really talking about music, but we should unite, do whatever is good for ourselves, do whatever is good for us all, because we are the only one who can save ourselves. No one is going to save you. No one is going to save me. No one is going to save them who are not watching this video. Everyone must be saved by themselves. Thank you so much for having taken our time to watch this video. I really appreciate, brothers and sisters. If it's your first time on this channel, please consider subscribing, sharing, commenting, and liking the video. Now, I'm shooting this out of nowhere because I really wanted to have a word with you before the day ends or something of the sort. Thank you so much, and see you in my next episode.